I get we're live. Patrick, you're gonna have to say something about hopefully Scott's gonna join us.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he's a surprise appearance coming in 12 minutes into it.
Yeah. And I'm watching us on the other screen where we're paused at the moment.
Indeed. We see a couple of people coming in. Evan from Montreal. We know Evan. What's up, Evan?
Good to see Evan for sure.
Beautiful.
Fucking technology.
We got Scott in the house.
Hello.
Hey, Scott. How's it going, sir?
That's me. Understand technology.
Leave you
Good to see you, Scott.
To set it up.
What's up, Neil?
Hi.
Hi, Leslie. There we go. Now am I here?
You are
I'm
here.
With your big earmuffs. I love them.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to block out the world as best I can.
How's that working for you?
Surprisingly, not well.
Unsuccessful to date. Very nice. Let's give it another minute and then.
I'm sorry to spook you. I never should have accepted the 15 minutes prior to the top of the hour invite. There's no way I can do that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It was a buffer.
Yeah. I'm in hell right now of like 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Zooms without a break to take a pee.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's not good.
Let's tell everybody about your pee breaks.
Yeah, exactly. All the 20 people now.
If we're really in tech sales, we would call them bio breaks.
Bio breaks.
Yeah, bio breaks. Yeah, that's the buzzword. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I know we have, I think, 20 people into the live. Let's kick things off. First of all, welcome everyone to the Tearing Up the State of Sales Report LinkedIn Live. As a matter of introduction, I'm Patrick. I'm the founder and the CEO of Pod. We're a pipeline intelligence platform for B2B sales team. This year has been a pretty busy year in the world of B2B sales. There's been no shortage of hot takes, debates, surprises. And a few weeks ago, as you guys probably saw, Salesforce came in hot with its 6th State of Sales report. Lots of statistics, surveys, results, facts, and today I'm very, very excited to be bringing together some of the sharpest minds in sales, 3 amazing people, 3 pod ambassadors, 3 juggernauts of sales, Leslie Venetz, Scott Leese, and Neil Weitzman. Welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Juggernaut.
Thank you.
The best of the best.
Sharp. Razor sharp.
Razor sharp. So I hope you're all excited for the coming hour. We'll cover a number of different things from the report, from how reps feel about their quota, the challenges that they're facing, how they see enablement helping or not being helpful, the role of AI in all of this. Obviously, we have to talk about AI and how sales team adopt AI. So it's a busy docket. Let's dive right in. Before we get started, anything Neil, Scott, Leslie, you guys want to share before we?
Can you put our faces back?
Yes. Here we go.
I like the headshot version of my face that's actually like wearing makeup and has her hair washed, but this is a little bit more.
This is much better. Yeah, beautiful. That makes sense.
This is the non-AI version, Leslie.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, cool. So to get started, let me kick things off with a stat about salespeople meeting their quota. So we see in the report that 67% of sales rep don't expect to hit their quota this year, with 84% of them having missed it last year. And the opposite, you see a lot of sales leaders being much more confident, with 79% of them feeling confident about revenue increasing year over year. So as a starting point, do you guys think that reps are too pessimistic? Do you think that leaders are too optimistic? I'll throw that question in the ether. Whoever wants to kick us off.
We probably all have opinions on this, but Leslie or Scott, you guys want to go first?
I think sales leaders are too optimistic. I mean, that's my sort of gut reaction. And I think there's like also a disconnect because profits are going up. That was another like point in the report. So these companies are increasing their revenue, which maybe is the indicator that sales leaders are watching, but they're increasing their revenue often by increasing the per rep quota without giving the reps different territories, different tools, more training. So I think the reps are closing more business overall, which is what sales leaders and founders are seeing and might be causing that optimism. But they are not sort of bringing the reps along with them in terms of enabling them to consistently hit quota.
I love that. Kind of asymmetry.
I'll take the rep side. I don't think reps are too negative. I think reps for the first time are empowered to speak their mind. And what their mind is reflection of their reality over the last few years. The veil is gone. Everybody has seen behind the wizard's curtain, for better or for worse, right? Everybody's building stuff in public. Everybody's sharing information. There's more transparency around the good and the bad and the ugly than ever before. Everybody has a voice and a microphone, and everybody realizes that with a voice and a microphone, it's not that hard to replicate their current income level. So they ask themselves these questions all the time. Why the fuck do I want to work for Patrick, who keeps jacking up my quota?
Not this Patrick.
No, another Patrick.
You know, for whatever the CEO is, why do I want to keep doing this? You know, right. and they're working their tail off, and they're working in an environment that is changing at a rate that, in my opinion, we've never seen before. At least I've never seen in my, professional work life. People try to make phone calls the way you used to do. Can't exist just on phone calling. You can't exist just on emailing. You can't exist just on DMing people on LinkedIn. People are trying really, really hard and just struggling. And I don't think that's negativity. I think that's reality, and them sort of calling a spade a spade.
Yeah, I'm probably going to maybe split the difference and agree with everyone in a sense. I think there is sales reps on average, as we all know, have a habit of being overly optimistic. History shows with quotas, with the forecasts, etc. So I'm not sure that part of it's changed, but I agree, Scott, that there's a more reality to people having a voice. However, I would say that I still think if you take 100 sales reps, we all, us especially, we live in this LinkedIn world, and we hear from many people, and those people, or many of them, seem to have a voice. But I think if you take the average 100 sales reps and you don't think of just LinkedIn, I think the huge majority still remain quiet, don't have a voice, just kind of sit in the background. And so I think we maybe have a different view of what this realistic of what strong voice is. And then just to go back to the founders and CEOs being too optimistic, I think that's just always the case. I think we all know great CEOs understand how to set proper quotas and targets, and they use data and information, and they subscribe to being ambitious but realistic. And bad ones don't, and they just go with what their VC demands or what they need, or I think I can get 50% because I hired 2 more reps, so there it is. That's our quota, and we know that's still happening, even though it shouldn't.
Yeah. Is that optimism or manipulation? I don't see ignorance. I don't see that as optimism.
No, you're right. You're right. That's probably a better way. It's ignorance, it's manipulation, I don't know, but yeah, maybe it's not optimism. You're right.
Do we think it's a healthy balance though? Like the leaders pulling on one side, salespeople pulling on the other side. It's kind of settles somewhere in the middle. Leslie, I see you saying no.
No, I don't. Because the dynamic is still that the sales leaders and the founders have more power. I agree with Scott that we're seeing a shift because we have folks like our friend Dan Goodman out there posting about all like the BS that's happening in comp. We have, folks getting terminated for no cause and recording it and posting it on TikTok and going viral. So there is a shift happening. but the power dynamic still lies with the people who are writing the checks for the most part right now. And so that is uneven, and the data doesn't lie. Like, most reps are steady missing their quota.
Majority of them.
The majority of them, right? And I think that, I mean, I've seen it in my own career, and I would guess everybody watching has seen it as well, that we are often sold a dream of OTE, and it's faux TE to sell a line from Alexine Mudwar, right? Like, it is not a real and accessible amount of money to expect to earn for maybe 100%, but probably at least 95% of the reps. So it's, I think the shift is happening, that sellers at least are aware now that it is appropriate, not just appropriate, to ask questions like, how many of your reps hit quota? What is the average earnings? But the power dynamic still lies with the leaders and founders.
I think we've talked a lot about, to some extent, on the founders and the leaders setting the quota, that being one of the reason why people don't expect to hit their quota all that much. And there are probably other reason and challenges that sales organization and salespeople are facing. The report highlights a few of them, some external factors that are out of the hands of these sales organizations, some of them that are internal factors. So a couple of them are marketplace competition, high customer expectation, the number of approvals needed on a deal. There's also, on the flip side, inaccurate customer data, ineffective tools and tech. Some of these reasons are, to some extent, in the control of sales organization. Outside of kind of the quota setting side of things, what do you guys believe are potentially real underlying issue? And do we think that technology or data is a reason why, or some of the challenges that they're facing and impacting their ability to hit quota?
Well, let's do an exercise real quick. Can you repeat the first couple things that you said in terms of the reasons? You said market conditions. What were there was like 3.
Yeah. Marketplace competition, high customer expectations, and number of approvers needed on deals.
Yeah.
Are 3 of the more external factors highlighted as challenges.
Let's stop there for a second, because those, to me, are within our control. All of those. That's not different. It's only different if you jumped into tech sales in 2019 and you only really worked for like 2 years before the world spun on its axis. Because if you're an old salty dog like me and you've been around for a long time, none of those things are new. There's always been tremendous market competition. There's always been high expectations, or I'd argue unrealistic expectations on behalf of buyers. There's always been like faulty tools or no tools. I mean, when I was selling, I didn't have a CRM. I didn't even have a freaking headset. We take a lot of these things for granted, So those 3 things, to me, that lands a little more in the excuse factory side of things for me. Now say the other things that you said when you followed that up.
So I said inaccurate customer data, ineffective tools and techs, low quality leads.
Yeah. So now those are a problem, right? Yeah. Because we've siloed out the old days of like Scott and Neil, who are old enough when they had to source their own leads from somewhere.
Why are you throwing me into that old place?
Because I'm more comfortable insulting you publicly than I am Leslie. We had to go get our own leads, and so yes, we wasted a lot of time doing that, but we had nobody to blame if we had a lead that like sucked or we had a bad phone number. We had nobody really to blame but ourselves. But now the rep shows up, they're funneled these leads. They say, hey, you only have 200 accounts that you get to work total, and 100 of them are garbage. And you're a rep, and you're like, what the hell? What are my options here? I just burned this time with this thing. This person over here is supposed to help me out and hook me up, and they didn't. And now they get frustrated. And you have these tools. You talk about faulty tools. This is really preposterous to me. The best like data tool out there, we've somehow come to expect that 50% accuracy is the best that there is. Pick a tool. I don't have a dog in this hunt, by the way. Pick any of the data providing tools. If somebody is 60% accurate, my God, everybody would migrate over. But the reality is everybody's about 50% accurate, and we're somehow okay with that.
Yeah.
If Leslie hits 50% of her quota today, she's fired. if Patrick hits 50% of his product release goals, there's no company. But data providers only have to provide 50% accuracy, and they're $1 billion unicorn.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse from a rep perspective. That's not an excuse. That's a reality to me. So it's important, I think, to make a distinction there between some of those things. Go ahead, Neil.
No, I was just going to say, I fully agree. I'm not going to add too much commentary. I'll pass to Leslie, but it's really just, I'm not sure we're okay with it. It's just, show me a data provider that is way more accurate and we'd probably all buy it. I don't know if it exists, right? I mean, so I'm not sure.
Well, it doesn't have to exist because we're spending money on these providers. We're not forcing them to get better.
And I think there is an element of being okay with it in that we are buying these tools and we're saying, here's your sole source of where you're going to get leads is downloading a list. And we are not training or forcing our reps to actually do lead research. So I think that there's a bit of a disconnect, and Scott, you hit on this, that like the way we used to do research is going out and like looking up associations and calling associations, see who was speaking at events. Like, you know, I see Remy in the comments, like going door to door, figuring out a business in a neighborhood and doing Google Maps to see where the nearby businesses are. Like we used to be so I think
resourceful,
creative and resourceful in the way that we found leads, which made the leads better because there was a real like reason for them besides, hey, you meet 5 of our firmographic, you know, check boxes. And I do see that there is a huge frustration coming from reps I work with on lack of good data and like CRM hygiene and data cleanliness in general. And I also see then that because so many of them have only existed in this kind of like bubble of like, here's your robust tech stack, they simply don't have maybe the tools, the resources, even the know-how or the drive to go out and prospect in a different way. So there's a huge disconnect happening when it comes to folks complaining about bad data and actually doing something about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a just quick little story that's interrelated here. I have a organization I work with that went through this exact kind of live debate, but in practice, where the salesperson was like, "Hey, I'm going to use all this data. I'm going to start making some, build some sequences and cold calling and all the stuff that's pretty standard." And then the CEO, who was a little more old school, maybe like Scott Leese, and the CEO said, "Well, listen, this is all great." And he wasn't very attuned to, let's call it, the more modern world of GTM. And that's okay. I'm not insulting them. He said to the sales rep, "Listen, you've got 50 prospects within like 30-minute drive of you. Go fricking knock on their door and show up at their door." This is not a B2B tech industry, so it was not weird to do that. And see what happens. And then a week later, he came back and said, "Oh my God, the results I got were amazing. Like I had like 15 great conversations." And it just goes to show you again, like sometimes, nowadays we're using data, we're taking the shortcuts, we're doing things that seem like they may be more effective or being easier, when at times, and I don't want to date myself, but at times the old way of human connection and pounding the pavement might be a more effective way to do it. And I know we're going to talk about AI and stuff later, but there's some real examples where the modern way isn't always the best, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's a yes and approach.
Yeah,
like don't only go old school. Like use the tools you have at your disposal, but don't stop. And you're like, there's nobody to contact at this company because I downloaded a list and they don't have any contacts. I guess we just crossed the entire account off, right? Like find the balance to to do it. We have a great comment over here from Anthony. SDR teams are operating off power dialers, lacking the hygiene needed to ensure we're contacting the right ICPs or working off buying signals. And I hear that a lot. There was a poll that Ronan Passar put on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it had hundreds of responses. And the number one frustration was like, they're willing to do the work. I truly believe that SDRs are out there and they want to win. They're willing to put in the hard work. They're willing to smash the phones, but they simply do not have the tools, the training, the resources to like achieve the things that they should be able to achieve with the amount of effort they're putting in.
That's what so there's part of it, which is an overload of tools making them to some extent lazy. There's a mindset and training around being resourceful, have ownership, kind of taking the initiative that kind of mix it all together to get the situation that we have right now. Maybe a bit of not a tangent, but if there's all these kind of tools that are supposed to make your life easier, I think a statistic that always strikes me that always been the same over the past 5-10 years is that reps only spend 30% of their time selling. So 70% of their time is spent on non-revenue generating activity, whether it's prioritization, whether it is planning, updating data, doing research, et cetera, et cetera. Where do we think all this time is going, right? Is there, are all the tools part of the reason why there's a lack of productivity to some extent? What do you guys believe on this?
Certainly could be part of it. We live in attribution hell, where if you can't account for something, then, somebody's job is at risk. So now all of a sudden I have to do these tasks to make sure that marketing can justify their existence, because I put all these things in the right fields and all this kind of, I never had to do that when I was a sales rep. Marketing just did shit. And if I closed revenue, everybody was happy. There was no attribution things 25 years ago. Right? I never got yelled at to update a CRM. We never even had a CRM. Yeah. So now all of a sudden I got to update. I got to do data entry. Think about this for a second. You're a $150,000 base salary account executive, $300,000 OTE, whether that's to be believed or not. You're worth 1/10 to 1/4% in equity if you're a founding AE, right? And you have me doing fucking data entry and leaving notes in a CRM. That's time consuming. You used to just be able to leave a note like, call back Tuesday the 23rd. And that was good enough. Now they want you to write freaking War and Peace novel in the CRM, right? So everybody knows exactly what's going on. That's not selling. That's not selling. That's attribution. That's garbage. That's bullshit.
So just counter argument for a second. I don't disagree with you in principle, Scott, but just
and how are you disagreeing with me?
Well,
I disagree with you in principle.
Yeah. I'm gonna agree and disagree everywhere. But a counterpoint, maybe not a counter argument, is I agree with what you said. However, okay, now when you leave me in 3 months, Scott, because you get a better offer, and you take all that knowledge and information with you, and I have no freaking idea what accounts you were working or what happened. So succession planning, like that's a really big part of why we want some of this data, because you're not going to be with me forever, whether I want you to be or not.
How does that feel? Because that's how we've felt our whole entire lives on the flip side. As
well,
employees.
That's fair, but yeah, I'm never going to argue against the employee, but as a founder or CEO, you need to do everything you can to try to be able to run your business a year from now when my sales reps decide to leave.
So let me ask you a question. Do you have better odds of keeping somebody for a year if you require them to do all this data? So if they do leave, you're protected because you have all this information, or maybe novel concept, just treat them really well. Don't ask them to do all this bullshit. Let them sell and hit their number.
I don't think it's one or the other. I think there's a balance between doing a little bit of data to help themselves and help the company.
So where's the balance? Because we've overshot the landing big time.
I will tell you where the balance is, and it will also be a great parlay to AI. Because first, the reason that we're paying these bases is because we expect people to do that type of work, like company building type of work, right? If you're in 100% commission job, to hell with updating the CRM. Like get out there, get your bag. But if you have a nice, healthy base, part of what you're doing is retaining data, right? Like there is an institutional knowledge component to your job, full stop. With that being said, if you are asking your reps to have a high CRM hygiene to create that institutional knowledge, and you are not enabling them with AI, you are expecting them to do it all manually, which is a headache, which is a time suck, which is going to piss them off. It's going to cost them money, so they're going to leave. You as the founder are doing it wrong. So I think there is a compromise that if the biggest gripe from reps is data hygiene, and we know that great data accuracy and great notes help them close more deals as they stay with the company. We know it helps protect company revenue as those reps leave. That's important, but asking them to do it all manually instead of doing the activities that are direct line to revenue is nonsense.
100%. And if you look at the Salesforce state of sales report, this is where I have a problem with. I love this report, by the way. There's so much good data. However, when you ask people who are not clocking in and clocking out and tracking their time, where they spend their time, I have a really hard time believing a lot of these numbers. I've done this exercise where I've asked teams where they spend their time, and there's no way the answers are getting bad or accurate. They're all over the damn place. And when I ask them about it, oh, that's not what I meant, and this is what I meant instead, and I didn't have a place to put this because it wasn't asked in this way. So I have a hard time with that, this being pretty accurate on that question specifically.
What would you think would be a more accurate representation of reality as it pertains to how they spend their time?
I mean, it's a great question. Every business is very different. I mean, one thing that stood out in the data there that I in my preparation for this made a note on to talk about was the 9%, which comes back to what Scott's talking about. I think I saw 9% of actual prospecting going on, according to this survey, which of course is incredibly worrisome if I'm the person responsible for driving revenue. If my AE or BDR is literally only spending 9% of their time trying to make contact with their ICP. And this is where I get caught up in all these different headings and what they actually mean, because I have a really hard time believing that's true. And if it is, God help us all, 1/10 of their time is actually only doing prospecting. The other part is all data and research and all these things. We got to figure that out, obviously.
Maybe a thought here is, assuming, let's say that 15 or 20%, worst case scenario, is spent on kind of data entry, right? Do you think at the end of the day, if we only anchor things on the end objective, which is the ability to close deals, to close them faster, even if we're able to automate all the data entry, do we think that is going to have a meaningful difference or impact on the performance of a rep? I think Scott's point, your point is right, that obviously there's a behavioral and sentiment and culture aspect to it, which I think is important. But, if you do, let's say, looking at the numbers, you do 30% of your time selling. Let's say you bump that up to 40%, right? Just focusing on reducing the admin work and automating as much as possible with AI or without it. At the end of the day, my take is that if you're not enabled, you're not trained, you don't have necessarily the insights or the guidance to know how to sell properly, you're just going to spend more time doing the wrong things.
Yeah.
So like, how do we think about that? And how, I'm not saying that AI cannot help with data accuracy. It can be great, but sales is very simple. The only metric that matters is the ability to close these deals, and meeting your quota, or, closing revenue and closing it as fast as possible. How do we balance these things together, efficiency and effectiveness, so to speak?
I think if you spend more time selling, but you don't have more training and enablement to sell better, I think you're gonna get some small wins, but they're going to be very, very small wins. I mean, there's a reason that the report calls out sales training and enablement as the number one metric for growth. No. Right? Like if we are not empowering our reps to sell better, to the point of the report, to be more buyer centric, or to, some of the things that you called out earlier, to prepare in advance for market conditions and a more competitive market, or to be trained to get consensus on increasingly large buyer committees with more red tape. Like we are not setting them up to close more revenue. We're maybe setting them up to sell more, to do more effort instead of admin, but we're not actually setting them up to increase their win rates.
I mean, after bad data, the most common complaint is people don't get coaching, training, whatever you want to call it. So if everybody is doing less admin junk, everybody has more time to get coached.
Right. Which,
I'm not suggesting, leaders are not doing that. That's a whole other. There's a whole other reason why leaders are not.
That's
doing
the next part. That's the next one.
A whole other slew of excuses. But this is just not. It's just not hard. It's not. I've told this story before, but the last time I was a VP of sales, I had optional training slots in the office, 7 a.m., 12 p.m., and 5 p.m. every single day. And I had a very large team. You didn't have to show up to any of those. But if you did, we practiced, we rehearsed, we did PowerPoint drills, we did role play drills. I pick a topic, right? And I'd rotate and cycle through topics. So every single day, you have 3 hours of training and coaching opportunity outside of regular kind of business hours. 3 hours a day times 5 days is 15 hours. That's 60 hours a month. Optional.
I love it.
You want to create a culture of coaching, training, and development? It's pretty fucking simple, actually. You could start by doing that right there.
Time.
Why don't people do that, Neil? It's just time. Why don't the sales leaders invest the time?
Yeah. 2 comments. One, there's a couple questions on where some of the numbers we're quoting are coming from, just for everyone. A lot of the numbers we're quoting or reacting to are from the Salesforce State of Sales report. So that's number one. I did make a mistake. I just re-looked it up. It's not 9% prospecting according to the survey. It was 8%, even worse. I just looked it up. But anyway, there's where those numbers are that we're mentioning at times. To your point, Scott, and Leslie's right. We can probably all get really passionate about a whole nother topic about coaching, spending time on coaching, the difference between coaching versus managing, which is very different. I think we're all very passionate about that, and we should probably talk about doing some stuff on that. However, I agree, Scott. It is just time. It's desire to do it and time. I learned a long time ago, which I've tried to keep with me, and I try to coach anyone on this, which is if you're a sales leader and you have direct reports, or even if you don't, frankly, but you've got influence and you're a leader, you should be spending 50% of your time on your people, right? On your people, meeting with them, practicing, coaching, talking to them, making sure they're doing well. How can you support them? That's your job as a leader of people. It's not, you might have a job to go sell every now and then or jump into a deal and help with something, but the majority of your time is to help your people be successful. And you're right, Scott. If you're not doing that, what are you doing as a leader?
Well, I know what you're doing. You've been fed a lie. You've been fed a lie by the people above you that your executive team is now your team. And that's who you report to. And you shun everybody else beneath you. Fuck that. I never did that. Ever. Never did that ever. Grew just fine. Had executive relationships just fine. But I was loyal to my team and my people. I cared about their development. One of the reasons why leaders don't go do this stuff with their team is because they're so worried about the optics from the powers that be, right? The powers that be, the CEO, the board, they want to make sure you're doing like a pipeline review. Ask me, Neil, how many times I did a pipeline review with any of my reps in 3 years at what is now a multi-billion-dollar unicorn company.
Scott,
0.
How many times did you do a pipeline review?
0.
I was going to go over under on this.
That's not coaching. That's not development. That's nothing but bullshit. So you want to talk about where reps' time goes? Every single week, they probably have a 1 hour where they have to walk through every fucking deal in their pipeline and recite verbatim notes that they already got mandated to input into the CRM. I didn't do that. First of all, I never mandated a one-on-one with anybody every single week because most people don't want to go to those anyways. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So instead, I just said, hey, if anybody wants a one-on-one with me, my calendar's open, find an open slot, grab it. So reps would opt in. And when they did that, they'd come grab me at my desk and I'd be like, let's go for a walk. I would go for a walk and I'd shoot the shit with them. And I'd ask them about their life. I'd ask them about their kids. I'd ask them about their mortgage. And
I'm willing to bet.
I just talk about stuff. That's it.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet the correlation between the high-performing reps were the ones who took you up on that stuff versus the ones who never showed up.
It's split 50-50. You know, sometimes high-performing reps just want to hang out and talk. Sometimes they want to be left alone. But I didn't force it upon them. My agenda. I wasn't there to please my CEO. I was there to help my people get to where they want to go in their life. And help them get better, not just at selling, but getting better at being a person. And in turn, that result in extra revenue. And as long as the extra revenue showed up, my bosses could be grouchy with me all they want. And I would just be like, what are you gonna do? Fire me? Go ahead, fire me. I don't care. Look at our numbers. I'll get hired somewhere else. And they would leave me alone as long as I was hitting my number. And sales leaders don't operate like that. They operate from a place of fear. they try to placate the people above them, and they've bought this lie that the executive team is your team. No, it's not. Your team is the people that you serve. I don't serve the CEO. I serve the sales reps working underneath me. It's really not that complicated.
One thing I heard a couple of times is the fact that there's a lack of coaching, either structured or unstructured coaching within an organization. A statistic or a fact highlighted by the report that I was very surprised to see, and I actually probably don't believe in, based on the conversations I've had over the past few years, is that 77% of reps mentioned that they are satisfied with one-on-one coaching received from manager, and that 76% of reps say their enablement prepares them to make quota. There's a few things here that are contradictory, right? The fact that they're bearish about their ability to hit quota, the fact that they're satisfied with enablement. Hearing a lot of people say that they don't have proper coaching or guidance, and then this report saying that 3/4 of them are satisfied with it. What are your guys' take on this? Am I missing something? Is there an angle on this that we're not considering?
I think the disconnect is that very few of them actually get coaching or get enablement. So I think you're looking at a very, very narrow sliver of people who are actually getting the coaching and getting the enablement. And we know from data that like McKinsey has put out, Gartner has put out, HBR has put out, it's well documented that the majority of reps do not even get 30 minutes of like coaching training on a weekly basis. And enablement has increased. Like if we look at a title, there are more enablement people now than there ever have been before. But that's more predominant in SaaS. I mean, there's 14 million people in B2B sales, only a portion of those are in SaaS. So I think we might be overestimating the amount of folks that are getting coaching and enablement. And then you can see when they are getting it, the majority of them are grateful to have it and that it's working.
Yeah. And I mean, going back, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking everybody probably has their own definition of coaching and enablement. So people can they respond to a survey and a question, and there's no like uniform definition of what those things are. Yeah. Right. So you have to interpret all of these surveys and data with like a grain of salt. It's like, I could create any survey right now and skew the data to tell whatever story I want told. And we see that all the time, whether it's sales or politics or whatever. Right. So without
Scott, you seem to have a hate relationship with the word data.
Well, I think data may be king or queen, but data is definitely not a god. It's not an all-encompassing thing that I worship. No way.
For sure. Well, back to data in the report. Again, I agree with you, Scott, that how you interpret this raises questions. In the enablement section, it talks about what percent of companies or people are getting this type of enablement. And under role play sessions, it's about a quarter, 26%. And so I don't know if role play sessions is translated to any type of practice or specifically role play. I'm not really sure. I'm hoping it's not any type of practice, because I'd be really worried on behalf of our industry if only a quarter of them are doing any type of practice. But that came to mind as I was reading the data as well. Because I know the four of us agree passionately how practice is different than coaching per se. But practice sessions, role play sessions are incredibly important. And if only a quarter of people are doing that, then there's a big part of a problem right there, in my opinion.
What do you maybe to piggyback on that point, Neil? What is good coaching? Not to go on a complete tangent here, but I would actually argue that role playing is a key part of coaching, because a big part of a salesperson's job is in terms of communicating or understanding needs on a call or with a prospect, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
What is missing as part of coaching, so to speak?
Yeah, I'll start this, but then I'll pass to these guys. I know we all are so passionate about this. Even when Scott said pipeline reviews are kind of a waste, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say it just like that, but he kind of did.
Close enough.
Kind of do. That was pretty on point.
I think lots of the things we do are not a waste. It's how we do them that is a waste. I think a pipeline review, if you're not coaching through that, is an absolute freaking waste. It's regurgitating the data we already have. It's pointless. But if you're doing a pipeline review with the call out to finding the coaching opportunities and truly coaching on elements, it could be incredibly effective. But that's where we get into what is coaching versus just regurgitating or managing, which is very different. But let me pass to Leslie and Scott. We could talk about this forever, I'm sure. But
I feel like you're hitting on something really important, that there's a difference between training and coaching, like one-on-one hyper-personalized coaching versus maybe like role playing, post-call. Like there are so many different manifestations of it. What I don't see as a super productive use of time is leaders who don't have the knowledge to be able to look at the metrics, to examine conversion rates, and to dial in to coach to super, super specific skills. And instead, what I often see from that type of leader is that they do like the pipeline workshops where everybody just comes in and like updates them on the data that's in the CRM. And maybe there is some like light coaching, but it's really like situation specific coaching. And it lacks the lens of like, what is the skill set that we are teaching, or what is the technique that we're going to build that can be replicated and used as a best practice across future conversations.
It's more of if it's more of an information transfer exercise than I think an interesting point here is like training them on how to think about taking the pipeline review, think about their pipeline, not just asking them what's happened here, what's happened there, et cetera, but hey, you have all these deals. What do you see here that would be interesting, or what is blocking you? How should we unblock this? I think training them on, not necessarily training them, but teaching reps on how to think about their pipeline, their deals, etc., is something that my perspective is missing. And I think you're alluding to, Leslie.
Yeah. Like not just giving them the what, giving them the why and the how, so that they feel more empowered going forward to like own their territory and own their pipeline.
I'd also say, to me, I've taken a bunch of coaching courses, which were probably some of the best courses I've ever taken in my life, is learning about coaching versus managing. I actually think you shouldn't be allowed to manage people unless you take a proper coaching course. I actually think that should be a prerequisite. However, I think coaching is more about asking questions and helping people find the right answers that they think are the right answers, not that I think necessarily. So it's me as a coach asking questions. It's, hey, Leslie, what would you do in this situation? What do you think you should do? It's not me saying, Leslie, by Friday, I think you should do X, Y, Z. Please let me know how it went. That's not coaching. That's ordering. That's direction. That's me. Leslie doesn't learn anything from that. That's just me telling someone what to do. And anyone can do that. So telling someone versus helping them learn are two very, very different things.
Scott, any final thoughts on this? Are you boiling on the inside?
I got nothing to add on that this point.
Okay, cool. I think what's interesting as part of the report is they talk about enablement. They talk about AI and the role that it plays in enablement. As a segue to that big topic, there's a few different ways to go about it, but I'll start with a statement saying that you read in the report, that 83% of sales teams with AI saw revenue grow in the past year versus 66% of teams without AI. You see 80% of reps using AI saying that it makes it easier to get insights and close deals. Generally speaking, I don't think there's necessarily a doubt there's some sort of benefit or value of implementing AI across a sales organization. The report highlights some of the main benefits: data accuracy, understanding the customer needs, personalization for customers, sales forecasting, prospecting and customer communications. What do you believe, either across these five or tangential to these five, what are potentially the most valuable short-term and long-term benefits of using AI for teams?
Well, I think that the speed of research is a bit indisputable, I think, as an advantage. The elimination of certain bothersome and tedious administrative tasks is another. I don't really buy much of the other ones. The content generation stuff, the writing stuff, and we're a long ways away from it being good enough that you don't have to get in there and touch it. You know,
yeah.
we could all try to write a blog post or a piece of social media content or an email or whatever and have AI do it. None of us is letting AI do it and then hitting the publish button. AI generates it, and then we got to go through it and edit it all up. So I'm not buying that part. I'm selling on that part right now. It's the elimination of like, it's the time saving stuff, the research stuff, the administrative stuff. I also, by the way, have a very difficult time believing that 80-something% of the people are using AI in some. I have a very hard time believing that. That sounds like a very tech SaaS specific.
If it's just 80% of them are using ChatGPT in their free time to look for recipes, type of thing.
I just have a hard time believing that. I mean, I have a few friends who are in old school traditional services businesses and whatnot. They don't even know what ChatGPT is, and they run businesses. They're selling all stuff like. It's difficult for me to believe that 80% of sales reps on LinkedIn. Okay, fine, I believe that.
No way. Yeah. Leslie, go ahead.
I like did another deep dive on the state of sales report with Hannah Ajikawa, and that's one of the points I pushed back on hard. So I was like, that's bullshit.
Yeah,
like, it is. I talked to hundreds of reps. I'm inside dozens of teams. That is absolutely
no way. Yeah.
So I would say they maybe interact with AI, but they are not actively and strategically leveraging AI to push the business forward. So I think, Scott, that what we are seeing is that like a lot of them will maybe use like a conversational intelligence bot, which is AI. And like, I think that everybody should be using conversational intelligence bots that are linked to their CRM. So they're doing like the manual data updates, or they are using, I think, AI at a very surface level, and they're already seeing the benefits. So I don't doubt that even like superficial use of AI for something like research, to expedite research, helps. I think what I see is that often folks get AI wrong for two reasons. One, they view it as replacive instead of assistive. And I have not yet seen AI that is fully replacive where I can completely take myself out, but I have a lot of use cases where it saves me 50% of time, 80% of time, 90% of time. And the other thing I see right now that's causing a huge issue in sales, particularly outbound, is that AI has made it easier for folks to spam. And so they're doing more of what already wasn't working
of course.
at scale. And it just disgusts me.
Yeah.
I'll AI is VR.
Yeah, I'll be disgusted with you, Leslie. I agree. Just to add my 2 cents in here. So I agree with everything said. I think we're all passionately, violently in agreement. I think research is an obvious one that we probably all agree could be a great and is a great source of how to leverage AI to save time. To me, that's a no-brainer, and good companies are already doing that in waves. And on the opposite side, to your point, lots of professional services companies or non-tech, quote unquote tech companies, have no freaking clue. And I have a couple in that regard, and that's not insulting them. It's just that's not the world they've lived in. And so when someone brings them a tool that says, look, it's like it's magic, and it's amazing, and there's so much opportunity, which goes back to that 80% being completely ridiculous. To your point, 80% of LinkedIn people on B2B SaaS, maybe, but not in the greater business world or sales world, not even remotely close. I think it's probably more like 5 or 10% if you did that properly, in my opinion, if I was to take a bet. The only thing I will, in the defense of AI or in support of, I agree, Scott, that there's not many things out there that you can just press the button and it's done for you in any way, shape, or form without checking it, without editing it, especially LinkedIn content creation stuff. However, just to pull out one example, and I have no horse in the game here, but I did a trial on Fixer AI recently. It's pretty damn amazing. It really is. And I know there's others out there that are probably just as amazing. It's just one that I happened to try. And I did a trial, and it manages your email box, and it creates to some degree the response. Now, I never sent it without making sure I enjoyed it or liked it. I never would, and I don't trust it to that degree. But it did a pretty amazing job in many cases that would have saved me a ton of time. So I think it's getting there. I'm not overly comfortable with it yet. I'm still an old school guy, per se. But I think it's in some use cases, it can do those basics for you and save significant time.
So a lot of these things I think we mentioned are early use cases, surface level. We've talked about the fact that we don't necessarily believe in automation or full automation. I would double down definitely on this point. Depending on the persona that you're talking about, if you're an AE working on a $500,000 deal, you know, there's things that you can automate, but the core of your job remains a very human experience, so to speak, to assist your buyer throughout their journey, etc. You know, we've talked some of the use cases that are in the short term that are existing now. If we have to go wild for a second and project ourselves in 5-10 years, what do we think how do we think that the profession of sales is going to evolve with AI, or what is the role that AI is going to have in the day-to-day of a sales rep?
Don't let Scott answer this. The world's going to end.
The best part about this is nobody knows who's right. So I might be right.
Exactly. You'd be laughing in 10 years, guys, like I told you so.
Yeah. I want to be there when he says that for sure.
That's why I say please and thank you. So when the robots take over, maybe I'm on their good side. Are you asking for trends? Like, what do you think of the AI trends?
Well, not necessarily
10 years out, or
not necessarily trends, but going back to the initial question of like, where do we see the biggest benefits or the value? Scott, you've pointed out it's all about automating some of the menial admin work as a starting point. Do we think that that's the ceiling of AI? It's all going to be about automating admin work, or do we see value beyond it? Okay. And if so, what is the beyond?
I'll go first. So it's an easy bar for Leslie and Neil to sound rational with.
But yet we don't.
I just said I'd say please and thank you to AI. So
fair. I think you need to pay attention to rooms that you are not in all that often. If you listen to Sam Altman talk, he has literally said, I am building tools that are not for the benefit of humanity. That's literally what he said, right? And I'm in a lot of VC rooms and funding conversations and whatnot. And I'm telling you right now, they don't say the quiet part out loud. Everybody wants 2-person billion-dollar unicorn companies.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed in the next 5 to 10 years. Those things are real. Those things are also terrifying, which is why most people don't want to hear them. And everybody likes to poke fun at Scott and say that he's a doomsdayer and all this kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, that's what the VCs want. That's their big return. If they can get $1 billion company off of their initial investment, because there's no overhead, there's no personnel, there's no office space, there's no nothing. There's just the four of us on this call. If we built $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar unicorn, the profits are out the wazoo. That's their goal, is to eliminate everyone other than the people creating like the main thing. So if we create a main thing and automate away everything else, you don't need engineers. You realize that, right? You can build a website like that. You can write code. Like my brother is a very, very high up engineer, has worked at biggest bang type companies that there is. He literally has told me, all of my like entry level, mid-level kind of engineers, they're toast in the next 5 to 10 years. But nobody wants to talk about this stuff because it's too spooky, it's too scary, it panics everybody, and they don't know what to do, they don't know how to prepare. So instead, we're just like, it's fine. The best people will use AI to augment who we are now. It'll be like an Iron Man suit, and that sounds safe. I just don't believe that that's the direction that we're headed. And the people building these tools at the helm of this tool is literally telling you that, even if the venture capital people are not saying it out loud and they're shoving their money quietly towards people who are telling them, I'm going to build you a unicorn and I'm only going to do it with 2 or 3 people. That's where we're headed. We're talking about 10 years out. That's where we're going, in my opinion.
So let's get more specific. So with I agree with you, Scott. That's where a lot of, when you think of money and VC and profit, that kind of makes sense. That's what they want to do. But some of that seems like it could be feasible when you think of certain businesses that are kind of transactional or product-led growth or what have you, where a lot of AI might be able to do a lot of that for you one day in the future in a trustworthy way that doesn't freak us out. But now let's think of like a $200,000 complex enterprise sale where 18 different people are involved and there's, CFO all the way down to like the analyst. Do you think that'll ever get to that stage where AI can replace, if you will, in your example of having only 2 salespeople, get to a point where a large selling products like that,
Yes,
AI can do that? Because we all agree the human part is, we all say to now, that human part is the critical part to making anything actually be effective. But you think we're going to get there?
Eventually, yeah, of course, because that's the goal. Everybody has their mindset on that being the goal, so we will eventually get there. How long will it take? I don't know how long it will take, but we will keep trying to get there. And when you're talking about this buying committee of all these different people and the human being required to navigate all that, just pause for a second. What buying committee when there's a 2-person billion-dollar company talking to another 2-person billion-dollar company? What buying committee? There's no committee anymore. There's just Patrick and Scott's company selling to Neil and Leslie's company. That's it.
Yeah, I think the question in this case is more of kind of the timeline and whether that's going to be the overwhelming majority of how it's going to happen or not, and whether it's 10 years, 50 years, or 150 years, so to speak. Yeah.
For me, that's what it is, and like I said at the beginning, the beautiful thing here is everybody can have an opinion, and everybody might be right, and everybody might be wrong. Nobody knows. This is just a thought exercise about possibly 10 years out from now.
But how fun is it though, right?
Neil, it's something that you mentioned is about the kind of these big enterprise deals, and so let's bring it back to a timeline that is a bit more in the short term, so to speak, the next 5 years. As part of the report, something I thought was very, very interesting, partially because that's something that we're really excited about at Pod, is the fact that real-time selling guidance is the top enablement activity where AI is used, with 70% of respondents kind of talking about real-time selling guidance. And the contrary, so to speak, or in comparison, call coaching, which I think is a lot more of a well-known use case, only has 47% of respondents that are pointing it out as a use case for AI. Maybe a general question, in your opinions, what is real-time selling guidance? I think it's a generic term. Maybe Leslie, because we didn't hear you on the last question. What's your take on what is real-time selling guidance? What does it look like tangibly?
I think we're seeing some of it already with some of these conversational intelligence bots. But like if I was building a company and that was my product offering, I would want AI that could ask really smart questions. Like that would be my primary use case, is like funneling back question ideas to the rep. One of the things that excites me the most about AI, and let's be honest, the most exciting use cases for AI are not in B2B sales. One of the things that excites me the most is AI's computational ability, which the human brain simply does not have. And I'm not saying that like robots are going to take over the world, and I'm not saying we're all going to lose our jobs. I think there is a human component. Like we are a pack creature. I don't think that will ever go away, but there are simply things that AI will allow us to do that we cannot do without its support, and being able to connect those dots and like do needs analysis and ask super smart questions and like read tone and read facial features and read body language that we can read between the lines, which humans think they're good at, but they're kind of shit at. I think that is, and it would be such a cool use case for real-time call feedback.
I love that. I know that we're coming up on time on the LinkedIn Live. Maybe let's finish things off with a rapid fire, one question, brief answer. In the next year, what is the one trend or insight that you will keep a close eye onto? And it could be about anything from enablement to AI to productivity, whatever that might be. Maybe Scott, starting with you.
Unrealized tax gains.
Okay.
Because here's why. Here's why though. And this is potentially a positive spin on it. Because if that is in fact going to happen, and that's the trend, there may be a flurry of M&A activity as people try to get their money out before they have to deal with this kind of stuff, which would be a good thing for people who have had equity locked up for Lord knows how many years now, because there's been no liquidity events, no IPO markets, nothing. So that you're asking me what's the one trend to keep an eye on? That's the trend to keep an eye on, I think.
Cool. Neil?
We didn't talk a lot about the world of partnerships. And we all know that, some people think it's new and growing, and others who've been around like salty dogs, as Scott calls us. Partnerships has always been huge and important. It's partnerships that work, partnerships that, you can't just build a partnership and get a logo, and me and Scott are now partners, and he throws my logo on his webpage and then I throw his, and then we talk once in a blue moon, and all of a sudden I get leads from Scott. That's just not how it freaking works, right? It needs focus and attention and so on. So I think the whole idea of how technology and AI can enable the world of partnerships, but not losing what most companies don't do, which is focus properly on it. So many companies say, oh yeah, we're doing partnerships, but they don't even have a person that's the partnership manager, or is there's no FTE even focused on that. So I think that whole world, which is, if you look on LinkedIn, is, seems to be growing like crazy, and everyone's talking about it now again, has always been there. But again, how you do it properly and correctly is something that still needs a ton of work.
Beautiful. Leslie, closing thought?
One of the things I'm most excited about, and maybe part of this is because I'm a solopreneur, and so outside of communities, I don't have colleagues I can sense check ideas with. But I love, well, yes, outside of my community, I love the ability to sort of use chat or similar technology to brainstorm ideas, to ask for help. And I think that translates to the ability for individual contributors, for sales leaders to remove some of the barrier, where if you aren't getting that coaching, that training, that enablement that you want in your organization, and you choose to stay there, like, you have absolutely no excuse for not going out and tapping into these tools, many of which are free, to level up your acumen.
Yeah. I love that. There's a super interesting article in a newsletter called No Mercy, No Malice from Scott Galloway on the AI thought partner. More than just AI to get data, but to just send, to be able to bounce ideas around with and reason, et cetera, et cetera. So beautiful. I love that one. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Scott, Neil, Leslie. This was hopefully a very fun conversation. It was for me. Hopefully it was insightful for everyone who kind of tuned in. There's no shortage, like I mentioned earlier, of hot takes and changes and insights in the world of sales. It's going to continue to change. It still does. It always had. So I'm excited about the next few years. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk again soon.
Everybody.
Take care, guys.
Awesome. Thanks.